Hey guys, what's up? I'm Noah, this is Analog Resurgence, and today I'm taking a look at the Bell & Howell FilmoSound Super 8 system. Something that's been on my mind for a while now as the channel has been growing is the idea of at some point doing certain videos actually on film. I mean, like shoot them, get them processed and then scanned, edit them, and then upload them. But originally, actually shooting the whole thing on film. This is something that is possible, but expensive, and also there's a lot of different aspects to it, especially if I'm talking about doing it on Super 8. Mainly sound. Super 8 is not a format that has the ability to easily incorporate sound into the footage that you're shooting. And while the idea of doing like an entire video on film is on hold for the time being, I've still really wanted to dive more into sync sound with Super 8, because in the past there have been some really interesting ways of achieving it. For a long time, Kodak made Sound Super 8 film, which went into Sound Super 8 cameras. Now, I've talked about it before, but single system sound, as it was called, had everything contained within the film cartridge and the camera. That's all you needed in order to shoot Super 8 footage that also had audio with it. Sound Super 8 film is long gone and hasn't really been made for nearly 30 years at this point. But before Super 8 sound film existed, there were some other ways of working with sound while you were using this format. One of the big ones was the Super 8 Sound Company, and they used to convert reel-to-reel tape recorders that would work with certain Super 8 cameras in order to record audio onto special magnetic audio recording tape. Super 8 Sound doesn't really exist anymore, but they actually evolved into Pro 8mm. And that is all very interesting topic that still requires a few more pieces to it before I can really do like a full video on it. But today I'm talking about one of the very first attempts to incorporate sound into shooting Super 8, and that was the Bell & Howell FilmoSound system. The Bell & Howell FilmoSound system was brought to market in 1968, and that's actually only a few years after the Super 8 format was created. And I believe it was the first double system sound setup for using with Super 8. Double system sound meaning that the film was in the camera and the audio was recorded separately on another device. Which sounds great, but the Bell & Howell FilmoSound system was not very good. Motion picture film cameras need special precise motors inside of them to run at a consistent frame rate in order to achieve a sync sound speed. Lots of 35mm motion picture cameras have them, some 16mm cameras have them or you can buy them, and Super 8 cameras, unless professionally converted, don't have them. Super 8 cameras run at an inconsistent frame rate, which means that it is constantly changing slightly. So if you were to just clap your hands at the beginning of shooting, start talking into a recording device, and then try and sync it all up later, it wouldn't really work. This is just my demo of how a Super 8 can lose sync with audio pretty easily because they're not sync motors, so presumably within just a few seconds already this has started to drift. But I'm not going to blow through the rest of the film just to show this off, I just wanted to demo it. So syncing up an audio file with the digital scan of the file has some problems, but if we go far enough back, then we remove the digital aspect of this altogether, because back then all we have to consider is the projector. The Bell & Howell FilmoSound system is a way of being able to shoot Super 8 film, record audio while you're doing it, and then project your film with audio all in sync so that you can watch it at home. And it did this by plugging your camera into a cassette tape deck and recording your audio. So the Bell & Howell FilmoSound system requires a Bell & Howell FilmoSound camera, and Bell & Howell made a few of these cameras, including models like the 1216 and the 442. FilmoSound cameras have two special ports on the side of the camera, one smaller plug and one larger plug. Along with the camera, of course, you needed the special FilmoSound tape deck, which had special ports on the bottom here as well for plugging into both your camera and your Bell & Howell FilmoSound projector, which of course leads me to the last major component that you need, the Bell & Howell FilmoSound projector. Similar to the camera, you can tell that this is a FilmoSound projector because it has two ports right at the front here. One smaller plug, one larger plug. And we also needed two special cables, one that plugs the tape deck into the camera, and then another that plugs the tape deck into the projector. All of this got you the full Bell Howell FilmoSound system. Okay, so how this works is we put our Super 8 film into our camera and we plug our camera into the cassette recorder. Also, because this is meant for projection, we're shooting reversal film and not negative film. Then we put in a cassette tape and plug a microphone into our tape deck, and there you have it, our budding young Super 8 filmmaker. Ugh. Oh boy. Once we start shooting our film, the tape recorder will start recording audio in unison with it. After you start shooting for about a second or so, a light will flash inside of your viewfinder, which means that you are running at sync speed and you can start recording that audio. So we shoot our film, we record our audio, and then we're done. You take the film out, you send it off to the lab to get processed just like normal, and then we wait to get it back so we can project it with the audio that we've recorded. The tape deck has recorded our audio onto one side of the cassette that we put into the recorder, and then on the other side of the tape it has captured a sync pulse from the camera. This sync pulse is a repeating signal that indicates every time that one frame of film was exposed inside of our camera. So I tried a test of this a few months ago along with my friend Jordan, and we attempted to just shoot one entire cartridge of Super 8 and have the entire thing be in sync. Except we didn't quite get that far because honestly the first FilmoSound camera that I had literally broke halfway through shooting that roll of film. So in reality, our test of the FilmoSound is about 1.5 minutes. Still long enough that if we can achieve sync with that, it's a pretty good example of what is maybe possible. So now that we've got our film back, it's time to set it up and project it with sound. If we take a look at our film, we can actually see our sync point on the film itself, because when that light goes in the viewfinder, it actually exposes a little area outside of the frame. The instruction booklet says that we can't have any blank area between our first frame of film and the leader of our film either, so I'm just gonna do a little splice job. Perfect. Now we put our tape into our recorder and plug the recorder into the projector. So once that little exposed area of film passes a point in the projector, then it triggers the cassette tape to start playing, theoretically lining up the picture and the sound. We also turn the speed control on the FilmoSound projector all the way to the right. Now the playback speed of the projector will actually be controlled based off of the sync pulse that is on our cassette tape. So we thread up the film, we turn it on, and...
Okay, so this is Norm Macdonald's dad's favorite joke. So there's a classroom that's so loud, oh my god. So there's a classroom of 6th graders, and this teacher comes in and she says, okay, so today we're going to...
Okay, so I couldn't get it to work. I tried it a bunch of times to get it to like line up and start running together, but each time it just seemed that it would not stay together, or one would start before the other, and I just couldn't get it to play back with sync. So I'm really not surprised that this whole thing didn't work, because from everybody I've talked to and all the research I've done, it seems like the FilmoSound system was not a great system even when it was released. In fact, according to the Super 8, An Illustrated History, which is a book that you should definitely go check out and maybe pick up because it's a lot of fun, it mentions that the FilmoSound system was actually pulled off the market within a very short time after its release. So I couldn't really get this to work very well with the whole projector setup. But the big question is, how does this transfer now into like a digital workflow of getting the film scanned and everything? I have a camera that recorded footage at an inconsistent frame rate, and I have an audio tape that was attached to that camera and recorded at the same inconsistent speed. How do I make that work together? The problem here is that when we take this film and we run it through a digital scanner, the scanner runs at a constant frame rate and creates a video file copy of the film with a constant frame rate. This camera shot at 18 frames per second, which is the Super 8's standard frame rate, but in reality, it may be shot at 18.3 frames per second for a bit, and then 18.4 for a bit, and then maybe 18.8. The scanning device can neither know that nor replicate it, so when the transfer is done, it is done at a constant frame rate. I have no way of knowing the abnormal speed that the camera operated at, and all that information is lost when I try and convert it digitally. If only I had some sort of reference point. Yes, the sync pulse from the cassette tape that was used to record the audio and connected to the camera gives me a reference point for the speed at which frames were being exposed when connected to this camera that ran the film that I recorded the audio with. So if I take a look at that as a waveform, I suddenly have a visual representation of each frame that was exposed. So let's take a portion of this track and just count the pulses. If I just count out the pulses over, say, a 5-second period, then I can approximate an average frame rate. So doing a little bit of counting and just a little bit of math, I can find that approximately my average frame rate is not 18, but actually 18.3 frames per second. And just that little bump makes a big difference. So all I have to do is adjust the video file to play at that frame rate and then visually match up my audio and my video, and I get this, 1 minute and 26 seconds of Super 8 footage with sync sound.
Okay, so this is Norm Macdonald's dad's favorite joke. So there's a classroom that's so loud, oh my god. So there's a classroom of 6th graders, and this teacher comes in and she says, okay, so today we're going to tell a story where everyone's going to tell stories. And then, so raise your hand, tell a story, and then after you tell the story, then you have to say the moral of that story. And so little Erica Jameson puts up her hand and she says, okay, I got a story for you. My dad, he works at the hatchery, and this one time he put all his eggs in this one basket, and he went into town, and then the bunch of the eggs broke, and the teacher goes, "Oh, that's a very good story there, but what is the moral to that story?" And she says, "Don't put all your eggs into one basket." So anyways, little Jamie Majerson puts up his hand and says, I got a story with a moral. And they go, okay, what is it? And he goes, well, my dad works at the hatchery as well.
So yes, the punchline of the joke that Jordan was telling there is cut off because our camera broke halfway through and we didn't get to finish it. And because of the inappropriate nature of the joke, I will leave it to you to seek out if you so wish. Now, maybe this is way too much work, and I agree. It's not a great way to do things. A lot of people will just kind of recommend stretching out your audio to match your footage and syncing it up the best that you can, but over really long takes, like a minute and a half like we did, it's not going to be perfect and it's probably going to give you a lot of problems. I wanted to try and achieve sync using one of these old school sync sound systems and seeing exactly what I could get out of it. And I got something that worked. Now it's interesting to consider that this whole system came out in 1968. And it does seem like a good idea at the time for just capturing your audio separately on the cassette tape and having it all sync up with the projector later on. I just wish it worked a little bit better. Around the same time, a few other systems that worked essentially the same way also existed besides the Bell Howell stuff. Things like Synchronex and Optisound, but they also kind of like had the same issues and aren't necessarily great either. The sync doesn't always work. You need quite a few pieces to be able to do it. The cameras themselves that they put out aren't really anything special. And for most people, Super 8 and sound really found each other when Kodak introduced Super 8 sound film and the sound cameras, and everything just kind of worked all in one. Choices for shooting Super 8 and having sound that works perfectly along with the picture are pretty limited, but you can do this. It's just maybe not necessarily worth it, and finding all the functioning components to do it also isn't really the easiest. You can look into getting a camera that has been converted to run at a sync speed, but not a lot of people do this, and it's also typically very, very expensive. Pro 8mm used to do these conversions on certain cameras. I'm not sure if they widely offer them now, but if you're interested, there is a link to them in the description below. If I find other people who do sync conversions, I will also put that information down below as well. But it's a very limited thing for Super 8. And then there's the Kodak Super 8 camera. Surprise! This was all a ruse to just bring up the Kodak Super 8 camera before the end of the year so that I could say I talked about it again, because I did a very, very small video about it at the beginning of the year. I haven't really talked about it too much. The Kodak Super 8 camera, which is a project we haven't heard from in a long time, has a very high price point, but also runs at sync sound speeds, reportedly. So maybe that's my answer. Maybe a year from now, I'll be sitting here with one of the brand new Kodak Super 8 cameras in my hand. Maybe. Between you and me, I feel like we haven't seen the last of that thing. But for now, I'll have to stick to playing around with these old sync systems and seeing what I can kind of come up with. Am I closer to making a video entirely on Super 8? Maybe. But I'm not sure necessarily if I want to pour more resources and film and money into shooting stuff with the FilmoSound system, because it's not great. It's given me a lot to think about, and I've learned a lot about exactly the problems with using sync sound with non-sync cameras. So I haven't been that impressed by the FilmoSound system. And I do believe that my quest for sync lies elsewhere. Thank you so much for watching, and there's some information and links and stuff down in the description below, of course. But also, Happy New Year's, because this is going up, I believe, on New Year's Eve. This year has been really nice making stuff on the channel, because there's been a lot of positive reception and comments and interest in everything, people reaching out, and I do my best to try and answer comments and questions and messages and everything, but there is stuff I miss. I do have a postcard that showed up in the P.O. box, and I've been told recently by Canada Post that the P.O. box is not accepting letter mail. I can only have parcels and packages and stuff like that shipped to the P.O. box. So if you have had stuff sent back, or letters or envelopes or postcards, then just know that it is because I can't control that at the moment. So this managed to slip through, and it came to me with a stern warning by the postal worker. It says, "Hark! Your videos are a consistent comfort. As a college freshman in a small town with plenty of antique stores, analog photography has been an addicting new hobby. I picked up this 86-year-old postcard from the bottom of a chest in one of them. Maybe real photo postcards could make for an interesting topic to cover. Yours truly, Elijah." I believe that says Elijah. If I read that wrong, I'm so sorry. But I will throw maybe a close-up or a scan of this in the video, and it is a vintage postcard. I would really like to maybe next year pursue the idea of doing merch for the channel, things that maybe are just kind of in general film related and not necessarily like specifically channel related. So even if you don't like me, I'm not going to put my face on a t-shirt unless you really want that, in which case you probably are mistaken. I think launching postcards, I think doing postcards would be a lot of fun, or just something small, but that's all stuff to keep in mind to keep me motivated for the new year. I also am going to do analog Resurgence Patreon shoutouts now. So if you're not interested in that, then again, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. Everybody take care of yourselves and stay safe and do your best. And I will see you all next year. So a huge special shout out and thank you to Abby Henderson, Abo Sylvia, Alex Onken, Alan Thomason, Anna Louisa Bernardez, BW, Bearded, Benjamin MacArthur, Bingling Zhu, Blake Moeller, Brian DeMartin, Caleb Churchill, Karsten Fuller, Carta Monier, Chalian Christ, Chaz Alling, Chris Rohr, Clifford Graham, Colin McReel, Colin Jackson, Dan Gross, David Kelsey, David Piranelli, Derek Konigsberg, Emma Goodwin, Emma Clyden, Frederick Kulatunga, Futigu, Gareth Tennant, Gurav Pai, Jermaine Saez, Juliana Lapedalina, Guy Fieri, Gwen Clement, Henry and Megan, Ian Hamilton Cummings, Ian Farber, Ian Frank, Jayon Lee, Jamie Maldonado, Jeremy Lee Camp, Jeremy McDonald, Jonathan Hurd, Jordan Weissing, Landers, Lario, Matt Bacon, Matthew Ellers, Nick Kosh, Orlando Perez, Ramblings from Canada, Raul Suet de Morris, Richard S. Pascucci, Riley Combs, RTH, Ryan Peters, Scott Vansel, Scott Walker, Sean Williams, the Super 8 Skateboard Company, Taylor Brown, Taylor Cusella, Thomas Wibley, Diego Almanca, Tobias Erickson, Travis Tobin, and Tykora Thomas. And a special shout out to those over on the Patreon who go above and beyond with a little bit more support. Carson Fuller, Chow Ian Chris, David Piranelli, Ian Hamilton Cummings, Super 8 Skateboard Company, and Taylor Brown. Everybody on the Patreon and everybody who watches the videos, thank you so much, and I'll see you next year.